Welcome back, viewers. Today we have three major updates, and all three expose the truth that Addis Ababa is desperately trying to hide. Point 1, students returning from exams were shot at in Amhara. Who pulled the trigger, and why is no one being held accountable? Point 2, Tigrayan fighters intercepted an entire truck full of kamikaze drones. What were they? Where were they going? And what does this tell us about the real war being fought? Point 3, Ethiopian state media is running a massive propaganda campaign about a military victory in Debre Mewi, but the real story is a crushing defeat on the Kumuk front that they are desperately trying to cover up. Let's get into it. Students shot while returning from exams. A truckload of kamikaze drones seized by Tigrayan forces. And a military defeat so embarrassing that the Ethiopian government launched a full propaganda campaign to distract from it. Tonight, three stories. Three windows into a government that is losing control and lying about it. Let's start with a story that should have made international headlines, but didn't. In the Amhara region, 12th grade exit exams are being held across Ethiopia, simultaneously organized by the Ministry of Education. These are high-stakes national exams. For young students, this is one of the most important moments of their academic lives. A group of 12th grade students in East Gojam zone in a woreda called Bibogan had just finished their exams at Debre Marcos University. They were on their way back home. Unarmed students traveling in vehicles. Their convoy came under attack. Bullets were fired directly at the vehicle. At least 5 to 6 students were confirmed injured. They were rushed to a local hospital in Bibogan. Social media reports claim some students were killed, though that has not been independently confirmed as yet. Now here is where it gets political. Fano supporters are blaming the Ethiopian military. The Bibogan Woreda administrator held a press conference and blamed extremists who are against education. The truth? Nobody has claimed responsibility. Nobody has been held accountable. And in a conflict zone where both federal forces and Fano fighters are active in the same area, a definitive answer may never come. But here is what we do know. Students in Amhara are already among the most affected by this war. Schools across multiple districts have been closed. Teachers have been prevented from working with both the government and Fano, blaming each other for the disruptions. Educational activities have been systematically destroyed. And now students taking exams are being shot on the road. Meanwhile, in Tigray, even the 12th grade exams have been postponed entirely, scheduled for the end of this month if conditions allow. This is what war does to the next generation. It steals their education, their futures, and sometimes their lives. Both the Ethiopian federal government and Fano must answer for what happened in Bibogan. Silence is not acceptable, not when students' blood has been spilled. Now to a development that reveals something very important about how this war is really being fought. Tigrayan fighters, specifically Army 70 units operating in the Sudan border area, intercepted a truck. Not an ordinary truck. A truck carrying an entire shipment of kamikaze suicide drones. These were not 1 or 2 drones. Dozens of small kamikaze reconnaissance and attack drones were inside when Tigrayan fighters opened the truck and began unboxing them. Video of the unboxing has been circulated. It is confirmed. The drone shipment was reportedly dispatched by the Ethiopian military, intended for rival forces operating against Tigray. Now the full picture is still developing. It is not yet confirmed whether all the seized drones remain in Tigrayan hands or whether some have been transferred to Sudanese partners. What is confirmed, this was a large, organized drone shipment, not a small cache, a truckload. This matters enormously for two reasons. First, it confirms that drone warfare is now a central part of how this conflict is being fought. These are not old-fashioned guerrilla weapons. Kamikaze drones are modern precision weapons capable of striking targets with devastating effect. The federal government has been using drone strikes in both Amhara and Tigray, and now Tigrayan forces have seized a significant supply meant for use against them. Second, it shows that the Tigray front is not passive. Army 70 is operating. They are intercepting supply lines. They are capturing weapons. The resistance is not sitting and waiting to be bombed. It is actively disrupting the federal military's logistics. This Doran seizure is a significant operational win for Tigrayan forces and a significant embarrassment for the federal government. And now the story that reveals the most about where this war actually stands. All day today, Ethiopian state media, especially Amhara state media, has been flooded with stories about General More Metima, his bravery, his victory, how the Ethiopian National Defense Force heroically captured the town of Faris Beth in Debre Mewi, East Gojam. Photos, videos, celebrations, PP activists sharing the story everywhere. You would think a major strategic victory had been achieved. But ask yourself, why does a government launch a massive media campaign about capturing one small town in Gojam? When Fano fighters move in and out of towns they enter, they leave, the military takes over temporarily. That is not a victory. That is a routine movement in a guerrilla war. The military announcing it as a historic triumph makes no sense unless there is something else going on. And there is. Here is what actually happened. The fighting for Faris Beth in Debre Mewi was not a clean sweep. It was a brutal, grinding battle that went on for nearly 3 days. Fano fighters put up fierce resistance. The Ethiopian military did not walk in, they fought for every meter. And in that fighting, the federal military suffered losses. Reports indicate that 1 or 2 military commanders were injured. So the campaign is not about celebrating a victory. The campaign is about covering up the embarrassment of it taking the full might of the Ethiopian National Defense Force 3 days to capture a small town in Gojam while sustaining losses. But that is only half of the cover-up. Here is the other half. On the Kurmuk front, which sits on the Ethiopia-Sudan border, something happened that is deeply embarrassing for the Ethiopian military. The Ethiopian military destroyed the Kurmuk bridge, their own bridge. Why would a military destroy its own bridge? Because they panicked. Because Army 70 of Tigray combined with Sudanese forces was advancing toward Beji. The federal military, unable to hold the front, blew the bridge themselves to prevent the advancing forces from crossing. That is not a military strategy. That is a military retreat disguised as demolition. A military that destroys its own infrastructure to slow down the enemy is a military that has lost the initiative. It is a military that is reacting, not controlling. And yet, the Ethiopian state media is saying nothing about Kurmuk. Some government supporters are now claiming the end wasn't even there, that it was RSF or SPLEM forces who were involved. But think about this. If the NDF was not present at Kurmuk, then why did the Ethiopian government allow RSF and SPLEM forces to launch attacks from Ethiopian territory into Sudan's Blue Nile state? Why did Ethiopia allow a foreign paramilitary group to open a new front using Ethiopian soil as a launchpad? Either the NDF was there and suffered a defeat, or the NDF allowed foreign forces to use Ethiopian territory and then watched the front collapse. Either way, it is a failure. Either way, it is an embarrassment. And that embarrassment is exactly what the Debre propaganda campaign was designed to bury. Victories in Gojam splashed across every screen. Defeat at Kumuk swept under the carpet. This is the information war running alongside the shooting war. And the Ethiopian government is losing both.